It's a late February evening. Just got out of biology class, crossing campus with a friend. I look at my cell phone and I notice that I have a missed phone call and a voicemail from another friend. As her voice came through and the words stung my ear and the wind whipped around me, I froze. I can remember the harsh feeling of the wind, the sound of the rustling bare branches, and the numb feeling that crept inside my stomach. Your father found your mother in an awkward position. Go home immediately. Awkward position? What? My mind started wandering down this path, that maybe she fell or had a seizure. Awkward position. The more I kept thinking of this word, the more that the panic started to set in. A friend offers to drive me home. We stopped by my sister's to pick her up on the way. We're driving to the west side of Youngstown. There's noise that's happening inside the car. My sister's phone rings. It silences everything. At first, I'm not sure who she's talking to and what they're saying. She hangs up, and she turns and looks at me and says, "Our mother's dead." I remember it felt like the breath inside of me froze. This fuzzy, numb feeling filled my brain. We're going towards the exit ramp now, and everything felt like it was closing in. I reached for the car door and I jumped. And even though I lie there on this cool, wet ground, with nothing above me but the cold, stale air and the night sky, I still felt like everything was closing in on me. We pull into the driveway. My hands of ice open the car door. It squeaks. This slight pounding starts in my head as I cross the living room, pleading to see my mother. As I walk down the hallway, I thought maybe someone will walk out and say, "April Fools," or "just kidding." That wasn't the case at all. I'm standing in the doorway. A paramedic steps back from where my mother's laying, motionless. And yet, there's a peacefulness about her. It starts me thinking. All those moments that I've passed up because I was in a hurry to go to class or go to work. We're always so busy. We pass up all the small moments that we share with the people we love. We're like hamsters on a wheel. We just keep going and going and going. And everything we love, everyone we love passes us by. And at the end, we're just there with a broken wheel and nothingness. Life is a journey, but if we don't take the side roads, how are we ever supposed to appreciate the small, beautiful things life has to offer us? We all have our own stories. How we tell them reflects who we are, where we came from, where we're going, and who influenced us along the way. Though our paths are separate, our journeys are the same.
September 6th, 2012 started out just like any other day. I came into the semester a week and a half late, so I was way behind. I had a day filled with what I had to do, and I started my day in the computer lab printing papers that were due in every class. And I got a strange text from my mother that just said 911. And I'm thinking to myself, 911 what? Did you call 911? Should I call 911? Are you at 911? And I get a call from her. And through her hysteric tears, the only word she can get out is Papa's dead. I called my brother and I met up with him on campus. We got in the car and we didn't even mention it. I remember we even laughed on the car ride, trying to deny the reality of the situation. As we pulled in the nursing home and walked to the front door, the reality slowly set in. The nurses immediately recognized us and showed us to the tiny room where my grandfather was. I walked in this very tiny room and I saw my grandfather lying there in a hospital bed, in clean white hospital gown, his mouth open, skin gray. In this very tiny room was my mother, father, my Aunt Patty, my Aunt Mary, my grandmother, and my godfather, my uncle. It was the first time I ever saw him cry. He was a symbol of strength to me. I saw my father openly weeping, and I thought to myself how special it was. There's this stigma in society that father-in-law and son-in-law don't usually get along, but my father loved my grandfather, and my grandfather loved him back. I looked over and I saw my mother, who was hysterically grieving and couldn't speak, no one could speak. And I saw her turn to my Aunt Patty, who was also hysterical and grieving to the point where she started hyperventilating. And I almost laughed out loud seeing my mother transition from grieving daughter to nurse in 0.2 seconds as she turned to her sister and said, "Breathe, Patty, breathe." I have this haunting image of my grandmother holding his hand. She was stoic. She didn't cry. She held his hand and said, "It still feels warm." I remember the last time I visited my grandfather. It was this past summer. I had a job that kept me away all summer, and I went to the nursing home to visit him with my mother, and my grandmother came along. And I just sat there laughing with him and talking about my job. And I remember this beautiful moment when I was leaving. I looked back through the doorway and I saw my grandmother and my grandfather sitting there in their wheelchairs, just talking. That was true love to me, and it still is. I remember on another visit home this summer, at a family birthday party, I was speaking with my grandfather in front of my grandmother and mother, telling him about the job that I had in which I had to shave my body. I saw a goofy grin come across his face, and I knew something embarrassing was about to come out. In front of my grandmother and mother, I saw him and heard him utter the words, "Do they make you shave your junk?" My mother just laughed, and my grandmother rolled her eyes, as I'm sure she did a million times in their marriage. He was a real jokester. He knew how to make everyone laugh. And I'm sure he made my grandmother laugh a million times in their marriage. My one regret is not visiting him and laughing with him more. What was the last time you visited your grandmother or grandfather like? Do you remember the last time you laughed with your mother or father? How do you remember the last time you spent with your brother or sister? Your friends? Live life with no regrets.
Hashtag I hate men. At Between the Moon. Okay, when you start composing emails to your exes using Taylor Swift lyrics, there is a problem. Hashtag I hate men. Girlsfact.tumblr.com. Girls fact number 154. I wish I could forget you like I forget everything I studied right before exams. Girls fact number 145. I want to write I miss you on a rock and throw it at your face so you know how much it hurts to miss you. Sometimes anger is like a blanket. It builds up heat, keeps you protected. Protected from feeling what's there, protected from feeling alone. It's like a shield. We build up all this hurt against our shield until we can't bear it anymore, and then the shield disappears and we're just collapsed beneath this pile of rubble. And then it's dark and we can't see the sun. We don't know how to get out. And then one day, the anger might subside a little bit, and we find strength, and we break through, and eventually, we see the sun again. Maybe we realize that the sun was never really gone, just out of sight for a while.